Wife tells husband to keep watering plants. Years later, he learns why. Nigel Fitton laid his eyes on Fred one day at school, and that was it. He was only 16 years old, but he knew she was the one. For that entire school year, he daydreamed about her until he mustered the courage to ask her out. He soon grew to love her sharp intelligence and her wry sense of humor. Little did he know she would continue to surprise him, even long after she was gone. Nigel and Fred continued to date throughout high school, and they both graduated from university with flying colors. Nigel completed his qualification in civil engineering and Fred in teaching. Shortly after, they married and started a family. Nigel's work took him to Kenya, Tanzania, and Ethiopia before the Fittons eventually settled in South Africa in 1981 with their 3 children. But the Fittons had their sights on one more lifelong dream. Fred longed to start a nursery school. She wanted to inspire young minds and encourage the natural curiosity in children to drive learning in a unique way. So when the Fittons heard about a small private nursery school for sale in the farm area of Fourways, Johannesburg, they jumped at the opportunity. Nigel and Fred quickly turned the small school into one of the most successful learning facilities in the area, with parents clamoring for their unique teaching style. According to Fred's fellow teachers, she ruled the school with an iron fist, not tolerating lateness, bad manners, or bad behavior. But tragedy was about to strike the Fitton family. In 2008, Fred was diagnosed with cancer. Obviously, her family were devastated. She fought valiantly for 5 years, but as her final days drew near, she had a special request of her husband, Nigel. And years after her passing, she would prove that her sense of humor prevailed to the very end, and even beyond that. After his beloved wife's passing, Nigel continued to man the school they'd bought. He lived on the large school property and tended the horses and other animals on the plot, as well as the house and garden he'd once shared with Fred. Every day was a new heartbreak, with memories all around him that reminded him of his loss. But he faithfully kept his promise to Fred for 2 years, even though her final request seemed odd. Every day, Nigel faithfully made sure that he watered the plants in the bathroom, as Fred had asked him to do in her final days. After 2 years, the plants were still alive and well, so he thought he'd done a good job of taking care of them. Nigel had no idea that Fred's dying request was a prank of epic proportions. One fateful day in 2015, Nigel decided that his time at Broadacres Academy was up. He had run the school for 19 years. "I'd like to carry on, but there's a need to inject new blood and new ideas," he told the local newspaper, Fourways Review. So his daughter Antonio Nicole flew in from Australia, where she'd been living, to help him make the move to a smaller home in a retirement village. It was Antonia who discovered her mother's long-standing and hilarious prank. On the countertop by the sink in the bathroom stood Fred's cherished ferns, the very ones she'd left for Nigel, with strict instructions to water them every day. But something was off about these plants, and when Antonia lifted them, she immediately noticed that they were much lighter than they should have been. Then she felt the leaves between her fingers, and an uncontrollable laugh burst from her throat. The plants were not real plants at all. They were plastic. Fred had decided to leave the world with a puzzling instruction that she knew would cause a riot of laughter when it was finally discovered. And Nigel had been faithfully keeping up his end for years, unaware of his wife's ingenious prank. When Antonia discovered the cheeky surprise that her mother had left for her family, she laughed and laughed. Antonia immediately took to Twitter with the hilarious story, and it quickly went viral, with over 40,000 shares. Nigel was also amused at his late wife's prank, saying, "I wondered why they still look so good." Then he followed Antonia's tweet with one of his own, a photograph of himself diligently watering his wife's plastic plants, and netizens loved it. One commenter wrote, "So many people can't grasp that the transition of dying doesn't have to be morbid. Humor is completely an acceptable approach to a loving end. Sending love and light to you, your dad, and those well-watered plants." And another replied, "I remember that story. It was so wonderfully human and made me smile." And the comments kept pouring in. Everyone was moved by the bittersweet story. "That was hilarious. If I ever lost my wife, a prank like that would be amazing. Plus, what a great story of your mom and dad's sense of humor. I love that story. Fred's final act on Earth was soon noticed by news sites worldwide. Nigel loves the fact that the hilarious story of his wife's epic prank has reached thousands of people worldwide. Fred has left a legacy of hilarity within her own beloved family, friends, and even strangers. And that's how she'll always be remembered. That's definitely the way she would have wanted it.